World War II, 1939 to 1945. World War II was a huge war that involved almost every country in the world. It started in 1939 and lasted until 1945. This war was mainly between two groups of countries, the Allies, which included the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union, and the Axis, primarily Germany, Italy, and Japan. The war began because of disagreements and power struggles between these countries. It was the deadliest conflict in history, with millions of people dying, including soldiers and civilians. Many cities were destroyed, and there were also horrible crimes committed, like the Holocaust where 6 million Jewish people were killed. The war ended with the Allies winning, but the effects were felt for many years after. The Spanish Flu, 1918 to 1919. The Spanish flu was a very deadly flu pandemic that happened right after World War I, from 1918 to 1919. It's called the Spanish flu not because it started in Spain, but because Spain was one of the first places to report on it widely. This flu spread all over the world and infected about 1/3 of the planet's population. It was particularly deadly, killing between 20 to 50 million people. Unlike typical flu viruses, which are most dangerous to the very young and very old, the Spanish flu also killed many healthy young adults. This made it especially scary and impactful on societies, many of which were already weakened by the war. Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love. The Great Depression, 1929 to 1939. The Great Depression was a time when the economy around the world went into a deep slump. It started in 1929 after the stock market in the United States crashed, causing many people to lose their money and jobs. During this time, many banks failed, businesses closed, and a lot of people were out of work. This led to severe poverty and hardship. People had to stand in long lines just to get food. The Great Depression lasted for about 10 years and affected countries all over the world. It only ended as countries began to prepare for World War II, which created jobs and boosted economies. September 11 attacks, 2001. On September 11, 2001, a group of terrorists hijacked 4 airplanes in the United States. They flew 2 of these planes into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, causing the towers to collapse. Another plane crashed into the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. military near Washington, D.C. The 4th plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania after passengers tried to overcome the hijackers. Nearly 3,000 people died in these attacks. This event had a massive impact on the world, leading to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and changes in how security is handled around the world, especially in airports. COVID-19 pandemic, 2019 present. The COVID-19 pandemic is a global outbreak of a new virus that started in late 2019 in China and spread around the world. This virus causes a disease that can make it hard to breathe, and it has been especially dangerous for older people and those with certain health conditions. Because the virus spread so easily, many countries had to enforce lockdowns, closing schools, businesses, and public places to stop people from gathering and passing the virus to each other. This has had big effects on economies and how people live, with many people losing jobs and having to adapt to new ways of interacting, like wearing masks and using video calls more often. Chernobyl Disaster, 1986. The Chernobyl disaster was a terrible nuclear accident that happened on April 26, 1986, in Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union. During a late-night safety test, there was an explosion and fire in one of the reactors at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. This released a lot of radioactive materials into the air. The radiation spread over large areas of Europe. People living near the plant were quickly moved away, but the initial exposure had long-lasting health effects, including an increase in cancer cases. The environment around the plant was also heavily damaged. The area around Chernobyl is still unsafe for people to live in. This disaster showed the world the dangers of nuclear power if not managed correctly. Fall of the Berlin Wall, 1989. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was an important and symbolic event that marked the end of the Cold War. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961 by East Germany, supported by the Soviet Union, to stop people from East Berlin and East Germany from escaping to West Berlin and West Germany, where life was much better in terms of freedom and economy. When the wall fell, people from both sides celebrated by climbing over the wall and breaking it with hammers and other tools. This event led to Germany being reunited as one country in 1990. It also symbolized a move towards more freedom and democracy in Eastern Europe and the end of strong divisions between the East and the West. Stock market crash of 1929. The stock market crash of 1929, often called Black Tuesday, was a major crash at the New York Stock Exchange that marked the beginning of the Great Depression. Before the crash, many people were investing in stocks, hoping the prices would keep going up. However, on October 29, 1929, stock prices fell dramatically, and many people lost a lot of money. This crash wasn't just a one-day event, it led to a long-term economic downturn. Banks and businesses closed, leaving millions without jobs. The crash showed how connected the economy is and how financial systems need careful management and regulations to prevent such crises. Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962 was a tense 13-day standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union over Soviet missiles in Cuba. After discovering that the Soviet Union had placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. coast, President John F. Kennedy announced a naval blockade of Cuba to prevent further missiles from arriving. The world watched as the two nuclear-armed superpowers confronted each other, bringing fears of a possible nuclear war. Thankfully, the crisis ended when the Soviet Union agreed to remove the missiles in exchange for the U.S. promising not to invade Cuba and secretly agreeing to remove American missiles from Turkey. Syrian Civil War, 2011-present. The Syrian Civil War started in 2011 when protests against the government led by President Bashar al-Assad turned violent. The government's harsh response to demonstrators led to a full-scale civil war. Various groups, including rebels, extremist groups, and later international powers, got involved. The war has caused a massive humanitarian crisis, with hundreds of thousands of people killed and millions displaced from their homes, seeking refuge in other countries. The war has destroyed much of Syria's infrastructure and has had a profound impact on the global community, leading to debates on immigration and international policy. Rwandan Genocide, 1994. In 1994, Rwanda experienced a horrific genocide where over 800,000 people, mostly from the Tutsi minority, were brutally massacred by the majority Hutu government and its supporters. The violence erupted after the Rwandan president's plane was shot down, and over just about 100 days, a massive slaughter occurred. Neighbors killed neighbors, and many were forced to participate in the killing. The international community did very little to stop the violence. The genocide ended when a Tutsi-led rebel group took control of the country. This tragic event is a stark reminder of the horrors of unchecked hatred and prejudice. Haiti Earthquake, 2010. On January 12, 2010, a massive earthquake with a magnitude of 7.0 struck Haiti, a country in the Caribbean. The earthquake's epicenter was near the capital, Port-au-Prince, causing incredible destruction. Over 200,000 people lost their lives, and many more were injured. Buildings, including homes, schools, and hospitals, were destroyed or severely damaged. This disaster was particularly devastating because Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the world, and it lacked the resources and infrastructure to deal with such a massive catastrophe effectively. The international community responded with aid and support, but the recovery has been slow, and the country continues to face challenges from this disaster. Indian Ocean Earthquake and Tsunami, 2004. On December 26, 2004, one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history occurred when an undersea earthquake with a magnitude of 9.1 struck off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. This earthquake caused a powerful tsunami that affected 14 countries around the Indian Ocean. Waves as high as 30 meters, 100 feet, crashed onto the shores, causing massive destruction. Over 230,000 people died, and millions were left homeless. The devastation was immense, with whole communities being wiped out. The world responded with a significant international aid effort, highlighting the importance of global cooperation in response to natural disasters and the need for better disaster preparedness. Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Disaster, 2011. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster was triggered by a massive 9.0 magnitude earthquake and subsequent tsunami that struck Japan on March 11, 2011. The natural disasters disabled the power supply and cooling of 3 reactors at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, causing a nuclear accident. This led to the release of radioactive materials into the environment. It was the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl in 1986. The surrounding areas were evacuated, and there have been ongoing efforts to clean up and contain the radiation. The disaster raised questions worldwide about the safety of nuclear power, leading some countries to reconsider their nuclear energy policies. Global financial crisis, 2007 to 2008. The global financial crisis, which began in 2007 and intensified in 2008, was a severe worldwide economic crisis. It started in the United States with the collapse of the housing market, due to banks giving loans to more people than they should have, including those who couldn't afford them. When people failed to pay their mortgages, it led to a domino effect where the banks didn't have enough money, and this caused a financial panic. Major financial institutions collapsed, stock markets plummeted, and the world faced a severe recession. Governments and central banks around the world took drastic measures to stabilize the economy, such as bailing out banks and cutting interest rates. The crisis led to a significant loss of jobs and homes for millions of people and sparked debates about financial regulations and the responsibilities of banks. Moon landing, 1969. On July 20, 1969, the United States achieved a monumental milestone in human history by landing the first astronauts on the Moon. This event is famously known for the Apollo 11 mission, where astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the lunar surface. Neil Armstrong's first words as he stepped onto the Moon, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," were broadcast live to millions of people around the world. The Moon landing was not just a triumph of engineering and science but also a key moment in the Cold War, demonstrating America's technological superiority over the Soviet Union. It inspired a generation and marked a new era in space exploration. Breakup of the Soviet Union, 1991. In 1991, the Soviet Union, a superpower that had dominated much of Eastern Europe and Central Asia, dissolved into 15 independent countries, including Russia, Ukraine, and the Baltic states, among others. This marked the end of the Cold War, a period of political tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. The breakup was triggered by many factors, including economic difficulties, a desire for more political freedom, and nationalism in various Soviet republics. This event reshaped the political world map and had profound implications on global politics, leading to the emergence of the United States as the sole superpower. Bosnian War, 1992 to 1995. The Bosnian War was a brutal conflict that took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina after it declared independence from Yugoslavia. The war was characterized by complex ethnic tensions among Bosniaks, mostly Muslims, Croats, mostly Catholics, and Serbs, mostly Orthodox Christians. The war involved severe human rights violations, including ethnic cleansing and genocide, particularly in the massacre at Srebrenica where thousands of Bosniak men and boys were killed. The war ended with the Dayton Accords in 1995, which established a complex power-sharing arrangement among the three ethnic groups. The war left a lasting impact on the region, with deep-seated ethnic divisions and ongoing political challenges. Arab Spring, 2010 to 2012. The Arab Spring was a series of anti-government protests, uprisings, and armed rebellions that spread across much of the Arab world in the early 2010s. It began in Tunisia with the self-immolation of Mohamed Bouazizi in protest against police corruption and ill treatment, leading to widespread protests. These protests spread to Egypt, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and other Arab countries, leading to significant changes in leadership and governance in some, while in others, such as Syria, it escalated into prolonged civil wars. The Arab Spring highlighted the power of ordinary citizens in advocating for democracy and reform, although the long-term outcomes varied significantly across different countries. Discovery of the Higgs boson, 2012. In 2012, scientists at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, announced the discovery of a particle consistent with the Higgs boson, often referred to as the God particle. This discovery was significant because the Higgs boson is a fundamental particle associated with the Higgs field, which gives mass to other fundamental particles. Its existence was proposed in 1964 by physicist Peter Higgs and others, but it took decades of research and the construction of the world's largest and most powerful particle collider, the Large Hadron Collider, to detect it. This discovery was a monumental achievement in the field of particle physics, providing crucial confirmation for the standard model of particle physics.